There's a voice inside your loneliness. It's been speaking to you in silence. And what it's trying to say might change everything you thought you knew about being alone. You wake up surrounded by people, yet the distance feels infinite. You scroll through 1,000 faces, but none of them reach the part of you that's waiting. Loneliness isn't the absence of others. It's the presence of something unnamed, unmet, unseen. You've tried filling it with noise, with company, with the glow of screens at 3 in the morning, searching for something you can't quite name. But the loneliness returns. It always returns. Not because you're broken, but because you've been listening to the wrong question. We ask ye, why am I so lonely? But loneliness is asking, who have you been abandoning? The ache you feel isn't punishment. It's a messenger. And like all messengers, it arrives when something important has been forgotten. When some part of you has been left behind in the rush to belong, to perform, to become what others expect. Think about it. When did you stop listening to your own heartbeat? When did your inner world become so quiet that even you stopped visiting? Loneliness isn't the absence of connection. It's the echo of self-abandonment. You see it everywhere now. People terrified of silence, rushing from one distraction to another as if stillness itself were the enemy. But silence isn't empty. Silence is where you meet yourself. And perhaps that's what we've been running from all along. Not others, but the self we've forgotten how to face. The mystics knew this. The Sufis spoke of a divine homesickness, a longing not for another person, but for the wholeness we once knew before we learned to fragment ourselves, before we learned that some parts of us were acceptable and others had to hide, before we traded authenticity for approval. Your loneliness knows the parts you've hidden. It remembers the dreams you stopped speaking aloud because they seemed too strange, too big, too vulnerable. It remembers the child who loved freely before learning that love required strategy. It remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. And now it sits with you in the quiet hours. This loneliness, not to torment you, but to call you home. But we've been taught to fear it. We've been taught that loneliness is failure, a sign that something is wrong with us, that we're not enough, not interesting enough, not lovable enough. So we perform connection. We collect people like trophies, measuring our worth by how rarely we're alone. Yet the loneliest people are often surrounded by crowds, because you can't truly connect with others when you've disconnected from yourself. You bring an empty vessel to the table and wonder why nothing fills it. You bring a masked face and wonder why no one sees you. The truth is simpler and more difficult than we want to believe. Loneliness is the soul's way of saying, come back. Come back to me. Not to isolation, not to bitterness or withdrawal, but to the interior world you've been too busy to inhabit, to the questions you've been too afraid to ask, to the silence that holds more truth than all the noise you've been using to drown it out. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone is a state of the body. Loneliness is a state of the heart. You can be alone and feel completely whole. You can be surrounded and feel utterly lost. Because loneliness isn't about how many people know your name. It's about whether you know yourself. It's about whether you've created a life that reflects your deepest truth, or one that merely reflects what you think will earn acceptance. Think of the times you felt most seen, most alive, most connected. Were you performing? Were you trying to be someone else? Or were you simply fully, courageously yourself? That's what your loneliness is protecting. The truth of you. The uncensored version that doesn't fit into neat categories or social scripts. The part of you that thinks strange thoughts and feels big feelings and dreams dreams that don't make logical sense, but make soul sense. Your loneliness is fierce in its protection of this truth. It makes superficial connections feel hollow. It makes pretense feel exhausting. It refuses to let you settle for half connections with people who only want half of you. It's saying, stop outsourcing your validation. Stop performing your life for an audience. Stop abandoning yourself in the desperate hope that someone else will complete you. You are not incomplete. You are not broken. You are not too much or not enough. You are simply out of alignment with yourself. And loneliness is the compass trying to guide you back. This is uncomfortable news in a world that sells connection as a product. That promises if you just find the right person, join the right community, attend the right events, the loneliness will vanish. But it won't. Because the loneliness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about the relationship you've neglected while busy maintaining all the others. The relationship with the person who lives inside your skin. The one you'll spend every moment of your life with. The one you can never leave or escape or divorce. How much time have you spent getting to know this person? Not the version you present to the world, but the one who exists in the wordless spaces. The one who feels things you can't articulate. The one who knows things you haven't learned. Your loneliness is an invitation to this meeting. It's saying, I've been waiting for you. Where have you been? Let me tell you something that might sound strange. Loneliness is one of the most generous teachers you'll ever encounter. Not because it's comfortable, not because it's easy, but because it refuses to let you live a borrowed life. It refuses to let you betray yourself for belonging. Most of what we call loneliness is actually grief. Grief for the self we abandoned. Grief for the connections we thought would save us, but couldn't. Grief for the fantasy that someone else could fill the void we created by leaving ourselves behind. We're afraid of this grief, so we call it loneliness and treat it like a disease that needs curing. We medicate it with business. We numb it with consumption. We distract ourselves until we're too tired to feel it. But grief demands to be felt, and loneliness is patient. It will wait. It will return. It will sit with you in every quiet moment until you finally stop running and ask it what it wants. What it wants is astonishingly simple. It wants you to stop performing and start being. It wants you to stop collecting people and start cultivating presence. It wants you to stop seeking yourself in others' eyes and start recognizing yourself in your own. The Zen masters have a phrase, original face. The face you had before you were born, before conditioning, before the world taught you to hide. Loneliness is the longing for this original face, this unconditioned self. You've spent so long being who you thought you should be, playing roles, meeting expectations, smoothing your edges so you'd fit into spaces that were never meant for you. And somewhere in all that shape-shifting, you lost the shape of yourself. Loneliness is the shape calling you back. It shows up when you're at dinner with friends but can't shake the feeling that you're watching yourself from the outside. It shows up when you're lying next to someone, but feeling oceans apart. It shows up when you achieve what you thought you wanted and realize it doesn't touch the emptiness. Because the emptiness isn't asking for achievement. It's asking for authenticity. Here's what nobody tells you. The cure for loneliness isn't more people. It's more truth. More willingness to be seen as you actually are rather than as you think you should be. More courage to disappoint others' expectations while meeting your own soul. This is terrifying, because being truly seen means being vulnerable. It means dropping the masks we've worn so long we've forgotten they're masks. It means risking rejection from others while finally accepting ourselves. But here's the paradox. Only when you're willing to be alone with your truth can you truly connect with others. Only when you've stopped abandoning yourself can you show up fully for someone else. Think of loneliness as a filter. It filters out connections that ask you to be less than whole. It protects you from relationships built on pretense. It makes shallow interactions feel insufficient because you're being called towards something deeper, not with someone else, but with yourself. The pain isn't in the loneliness itself. The pain is in the resistance. In believing that loneliness means something is wrong with you. In treating it as an emergency that must be resolved immediately, rather than a threshold you're being asked to cross. What if you stopped resisting? What if you sat down with your loneliness like an honored guest and asked it what it sees that you don't? It might show you the friendships you're maintaining out of obligation rather than joy. The conversations you're having that leave you emptier than before. The ways you're twisting yourself into shapes that don't fit just to avoid being alone. It might show you how much energy you're spending on being liked instead of being true. How much of your life is performance rather than presence. How rarely you ask yourself what you actually want, separate from what others want from you. This is uncomfortable wisdom, but it's liberating too. Because if loneliness is about self-abandonment, then the way out isn't through finding someone else. It's through finding yourself, not the self you present on your best days, not the edited version you curate for others, but the raw, unfinished, contradictory, beautiful mess of you, the parts that don't make sense, the feelings that aren't logical, the dreams that seem impossible. The ancient Sufis spoke of the beloved, that which the soul perpetually seeks. We think they were speaking of God, of another person, of something external. But the beloved is also you. The self you're homesick for, the wholeness you knew before fragmentation. Your loneliness is the beloved calling you home. It's saying, stop looking for yourself in others' approval. Stop measuring your worth by who shows up or doesn't. Stop believing that being chosen by someone else matters more than choosing yourself. This doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean becoming hard or closed or bitter. It means becoming full. So full of your own presence that you stop needing others to complete you. So rooted in your own worth that you stop seeking validation like a beggar. When you're full, you connect differently. You don't need the other person to fix you, save you, complete you. You meet them in fullness, not to fill a void, but to share an overflow. But first, you have to be willing to meet yourself. In all the uncomfortable silence, in all the unwanted feelings, in all the truths you've been avoiding because they didn't fit the story you wanted to tell. Your loneliness has been protecting these truths, keeping them safe until you were ready to face them. It hasn't been punishing you. It's been waiting for you. The question isn't, why am I lonely? The question is, what part of myself am I ready to meet? So how do you meet yourself after all this time? How do you stop running and start listening? The answer is simpler than the mind wants it to be, which is exactly why we resist it. You begin by choosing yourself first, not in a selfish way, but in a sacred way. You begin by treating your inner world with the same care you've been giving to your outer performance. This means creating space for silence. Not productive silence, where you're planning or processing or solving, but useless silence, empty silence. The kind of silence that makes the modern mind uncomfortable because there's nothing to achieve, nothing to optimize, nothing to prove. Sit in this silence, not once as an experiment, but regularly as a practice. Let the noise of your life settle like snow in a snow globe. Let your thoughts slow down. Let the urgency drain away. And then, in that space, ask yourself, what have I been avoiding? Not avoiding in others, avoiding in yourself. Maybe it's grief you haven't let yourself feel. Maybe it's anger you've been taught is unacceptable. Maybe it's joy you've been afraid to claim because it might be taken away. Maybe it's simply the truth that your life has become too small for the person you're becoming. Listen without judgment. Your inner world doesn't need your analysis. It needs your presence. It needs you to stop treating your feelings like problems to solve and start treating them like messages to receive. Right? Not for anyone else, but for yourself. Let the unedited truth spill onto the page. The thoughts you'd never say aloud, the feelings that don't make logical sense, the contradictions, the confusion, the uncertainty. This isn't about being eloquent. It's about being honest. You'll be surprised what emerges when you stop censoring yourself. You'll discover that beneath the loneliness is longing. Beneath the longing is truth. Beneath the truth is you, the unconditioned you, the original face, the self that's been waiting all along. Walk alone sometimes, not with headphones filling your ears or a phone occupying your hands. Walk and notice what it feels like to be inside your own body. Notice the rhythm of your breath, the sensation of your feet touching the ground, the aliveness that exists beneath all your stories about yourself. This is coming home to your body, the primary place where you've taken up residence, but have rarely truly inhabited. Your body knows things your mind doesn't. It holds wisdom your thoughts can't access. But you have to be still enough to hear it. Practice disappointing people. This sounds harsh, but it's essential. You cannot be authentic while constantly managing others' expectations of you. You cannot be whole while fragmenting yourself to fit into spaces that reject your fullness. Start small. Say no when you mean no instead of yes to keep the peace. Share an unpopular opinion. Admit when you don't know something instead of pretending expertise. Let someone be unhappy with you without immediately fixing or explaining yourself. Each time you do this, you're choosing yourself. You're saying, my truth matters more than your comfort. This isn't cruelty, it's integrity. And integrity is the foundation of self-connection. Notice where you're outsourcing your sense of self. Where are you waiting for someone else to validate your worth? Where are you using others' attention to prove you exist? Where are you performing your life instead of living it? These are the places where loneliness has been trying to get your attention. Not to make you feel bad, but to show you where you've given your power away, where you've made someone else's opinion of you more important than your own knowing. Take that power back. Not aggressively, but gently. Remind yourself, I am the authority on my own experience. I am the one who gets to name my truth. I am the one who decides what matters. This doesn't mean you become arrogant or dismissive of others. It means you stop abandoning yourself in relationship. You stop making yourself smaller so others feel bigger. You stop pretending you don't know things you know just to make others comfortable. Create rituals of return. Small, consistent ways of coming back to yourself throughout the day. A few conscious breaths before checking your phone. A moment of gratitude before sleep. A morning practice of asking yourself, what do I need today? And then actually listening to the answer. These rituals aren't about adding more to your to-do list. They're about remembering that you exist, that you matter, that your inner world deserves attention and care and respect. Not someday when you've earned it, but now, simply because you're here. Notice when you're numbing, when you're reaching for distraction, not because you want entertainment, but because you're avoiding feeling something. The loneliness often intensifies right before a breakthrough, right before you finally admit a truth you've been denying, right before you make a change you've been postponing. So when it shows up strong, don't run. Ask it, what are you protecting me from seeing? And then be brave enough to look. Sometimes the loneliness is protecting you from seeing that a relationship has run its course, that a career no longer fits, that you've outgrown a version of yourself and need to shed an old skin. These are uncomfortable truths, but discomfort is how we grow. The practice isn't about eliminating loneliness. It's about transforming your relationship with it. Instead of an enemy to defeat, it becomes a teacher to consult. Instead of a wound to heal, it becomes a threshold to cross. And here's what happens on the other side of that threshold. You discover that you're not actually alone. You've been accompanied by yourself all along. The very self you were longing for has been waiting patiently for you to notice. The external loneliness begins to dissolve, not because you've found someone else, but because you found yourself. And from that fullness, real connection becomes possible. Not the desperate kind that clings and demands and fears abandonment, but the generous kind that gives freely because it comes from overflow. You stop looking for someone to complete you because you've discovered you were never incomplete, just temporarily out of touch with your own wholeness. There's a Japanese word, komorebi. It describes the sunlight filtering through leaves. Not the sun itself, not the leaves themselves, but the interplay between them. The beauty that exists only in relationship, in the space between. Your loneliness is like this. Not something solid to be grasped or eliminated, but something fluid to be moved through. A space between where you've been and where you're becoming. You've been treating it like a problem. What if it's actually a portal? On the other side of your loneliness is a version of you that's been waiting. Not a better version. There's nothing wrong with you as you are, but a freer version. One who stopped performing and started living. one who stopped seeking and started being, one who stopped fragmenting and started integrating all the parts you thought you had to hide. The spiritual traditions speak of the dark night of the soul, not as punishment, but as passage. A sacred loneliness that strips away everything that isn't essential, everything you thought you needed, everything you thought you were, until what remains is simply presence, simply awareness, simply the irreducible truth of you. Your loneliness might be this dark night, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're being called towards something true. The darkness isn't the absence of light. It's the place where your eyes adjust to see what's always been there, but was hidden by the glare of constant distraction. In this darkness, you learn to trust yourself. You learn that you can sit with discomfort without it destroying you. You learn that your own company isn't something to fear, but something to cherish. You learn that the voice inside you, beneath all the borrowed opinions and second-hand dreams, is worth listening to. This is the gift your loneliness has been offering all along, the return to self-trust. Not the arrogant kind that refuses help or wisdom from others, but the quiet kind that knows its own truth, that can discern between fear and intuition, that can hear the difference between the voice of conditioning and the voice of knowing. When you trust yourself, loneliness transforms. It's no longer an emergency signaling that something is wrong. It becomes a choice signaling that something is right, the choice to honor your own rhythm, to listen to your own counsel, to be faithful to your own becoming, even when it means standing apart from the crowd. Solitude becomes different from loneliness. Solitude is chosen. It's where you go to refill, to remember, to reconnect with the parts of you that get lost in the noise. It's not isolation, it's integration. And from this integration, your relationships change. You stop attracting people who need you to be small. You stop tolerating connections that require you to edit yourself. You start drawing in souls who want to meet you in your wholeness, not your half-truth. Because people feel it when you're home in yourself. When you're not searching for yourself in their eyes. When you're not using them to fill a void or validate your existence. There's a groundedness that's magnetic. A presence that needs nothing but offers everything. This is the paradox. When you stop needing others to save you from your loneliness, you become capable of genuine connection. When you stop running from yourself, others can finally find you. Not the masked version, but the real one. The one who's been there all along beneath the performance. Your loneliness has been teaching you how to show up for yourself so you can show up authentically for others. It's been teaching you that love, real love, the kind that nourishes rather than depletes, can only flow from fullness, never from emptiness. You can't give what you don't have. You can't offer presence if you're absent from yourself. You can't share your heart if you've locked yourself out of it. So the work of loneliness is the work of coming home, of unlocking the door you barred without realizing it, of welcoming yourself back from the exile you didn't know you'd imposed. This homecoming isn't a destination. It's a practice, a daily choice to choose yourself, to listen to yourself, to honor yourself even when the world is asking you to be something else. Some days will be easier than others. Some days the loneliness will still ache, but you'll know now what it's saying. You'll know it's not telling you you're broken or unlovable or wrong. It's telling you you're ready. Ready to live more honestly. Ready to love more deeply. Ready to be more fully yourself. And isn't that what you've been longing for all along? Not to be completed by someone else, but to be whole in yourself? Not to be saved from your loneliness, but to understand what it's been protecting. Not to escape the silence, but to discover what's speaking in it. Your loneliness has been saying, you are enough. You've always been enough. Stop looking outside for what you already are inside. Stop believing the lie that you're incomplete. Stop trading your truth for acceptance. Come home. Come home to yourself. This is the message. This is the teaching. This is what your loneliness has been trying to say in every quiet moment. Every ache of disconnection, every feeling that something essential was missing. Nothing is missing. You've simply been looking away from the only place you were ever lost within yourself. Turn inward now. Not to fix or change or improve, but simply to meet, to see, to acknowledge. The one who's been waiting there, patient and whole for you to remember. You are not your loneliness. You are the vast awareness that holds it. You are the sky that contains the weather. You are the silence that allows the sound. And you are finally ready to remember this. Welcome home.